Ever wonder where your charity donations really go? What if the organizations you support are secretly pushing a political agenda? That's the fiery question at the very center of a huge new debate happening in Washington. So today, we're diving deep into the world of nonprofits and a new push to crack down on them. Is this about cleaning house, or is it something else entirely? All right, so what kicked this whole thing off? It all started with this little piece of news that, honestly, is a pretty big deal. The U.S. Treasury is actually hiring what they're calling a top cop whose entire job will be to police the nonprofit sector. And let me tell you, this isn't just another job posting. This is a huge signal that the government's view of these organizations might be changing in a big way. Okay, so a top cop, why now? Well, the Treasury Secretary has basically declared war on what he's calling rampant waste, fraud, and abuse inside the world of nonprofits. The mission is clear. Find the problems and clean them up. And, at the very heart of this entire debate is this one kind of wonky term, 501c3. Now, this is the magic number, right? It's the golden ticket that lets these organizations be tax exempt, and it's why your donations can be tax deductible. And believe me, that status is exactly what's under the microscope right now. So what's the big deal? What's actually wrong with these nonprofits? Well, if you ask some of the folks in this debate, a lot. And we're talking about stuff that goes way beyond just, messy bookkeeping. All right, let's get down to brass tacks. What exactly are these organizations being accused of? And the list of accusations, wow, it is long and it is serious. We're talking everything from abusing their charity status to dodge taxes, to basically acting as full-on political lobbying groups. And yeah, some huge names are being thrown around. The Tides Foundation, organizations linked to George Soros. They're all being accused of using their charity status as a backdoor to push a political agenda. The bottom line, we're looking at hundreds of billions of dollars swirling around with apparently very little public benefit to show for it. Okay, so that's the problem, but what about the solutions? Well, the ideas being thrown around are all over the map. We're talking everything from a little tweak here and there to just burning the whole thing down. It really boils down to 3 different levels of intervention. Okay, so step 1 is the more oversight idea. That's the top cop model we talked about. Step 2 is to get way stricter with the rules. We're talking forensic accounting, reclassifying groups that do too much lobbying. And then there's step 3, the really radical option. Just get rid of the 501c3 tax status completely. And right when you think the debate can't get any more intense, one of the speakers, Brian, just drops this bombshell. He asks straight up, should we even have 501c3 status in America? I mean, wow. In an instant, this wasn't a conversation about reform anymore. It was about a potential revolution. But hold on a second, getting rid of that tax status? That's a huge deal. As another speaker immediately pointed out, doing something that drastic could have these massive, massive consequences that maybe nobody's thinking about. And then, bam, another panelist, Gary, throws out one single word that just stopped everyone in their tracks. That word? Churches. And suddenly, it all clicked. You realize that countless religious organizations, we're talking churches, synagogues, mosques, you name it, they all depend on that 501c3 status to even exist. If you get rid of it, you change everything for them. And this is where it all gets really complicated and honestly super political. Because you've got 2 totally different views of what a nonprofit should be. On one hand, you have critics pointing to groups like the Soros and Tides Foundations, calling them insidious organizations that are just using their charity status to push a left-wing agenda. But then, on the other hand, you have free market think tanks on the right who say, hey, we're just educating the public about capitalism. So here's the billion-dollar question. How do you crack down on one side's political activity without looking like you're launching a political attack on the other? Where on earth do you draw that line? Which brings us to the big looming question in the room. Is any of this fixable? Can any real change actually happen? One speaker made a really interesting comparison. They said the nonprofit sector is a lot like the American healthcare system. It's so broken and tangled up that some people feel like the only way to fix it is to just rip the whole thing apart and start from scratch. That's a pretty intense analogy, and it really tells you how frustrated people are. And here's the ultimate problem. See, pretty much everyone agrees that reform is needed. That's the easy part. The hard part? Nobody can agree on how to do it. And in a political climate this divided, the chances of getting any real consensus, well, they feel pretty low. So it all comes down to this really fundamental question, something for you to think about. Should taxpayer money be involved in nonprofits at all? I mean, through tax exemptions, it is. Or is it time to draw a hard line and say all donations have to be purely voluntary with no government involvement? There are definitely no easy answers here, but one thing's for sure, the entire future of what we call charity in America is really hanging in the balance.